Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Beyond Narrative. Today I'm joined with Gabriel and Romy, who's the new co-host. Yeah. And I guess to start off, we wanted to know, who is Gabriel? Who is meme analysis? And who is the God Disc?
All right, what an excellent question. Because they are three distinct characters. Even many might not even know Gabriel is not even like my born name or anything. So they are three distinct. It's my middle name, though. I can give that much away. It's not manufactured, but not my name. So I guess Gabriel writes the poetry. Gabriel writes poetry and is a romantic gallivanter. The God Disc was a high school nickname, believe it or not. And it came because I made a short film called The God Disc, about a Holy Roman Emperor, Justinian II.
Whoa.
But it was set in the future.
Whoa.
And instead of Christianity, they worshipped the God Disc. It was a religion based on discs. So that was, I don't know, I guess the name caught on. It was a sufficiently ridiculous name that everybody started calling me it, including teachers.
Wow.
Like it was a full thing. My yearbook is all to the God Disc and all.
Whoa.
And then meme analysis started after high school because I wanted to do filmmaking. I thought I was going to do films, but I realized I did not like the idea of working up, of needing to climb the ladder.
Yes.
I was like, I could probably make things and get attention right now if I just express it correctly. So I started meme analysis pretty quickly after I graduated and did that for about a year while I was doing a lot more comics at the time. And then the channel did well. So it's been good.
Did it instantly take off, or what was that growth like for you?
No, it was a year of nothing. It was I guess not nothing, but not scalable. The first year, even the very first episode, there was very positive response from a few people. A few people were like, this is really amazing. You have to keep doing it. And then it wasn't until a few months in that I made a video that even got to over 10,000 views. I think it was Garfield. And because I was still very resistant to the idea of trying to make content that was aimed at popular stuff. I wanted to analyze the memes that I thought were meaningful. And then I sold out and it did better. Not really, but yeah.
I'm curious to hear why you picked meme analysis specifically, and when accessibility for your viewers understand what memes you're referencing, etc., became important to you.
I guess in high school I'd had something of a vision of the future, and I envisioned kind of this acceleration of media at such a rapid rate. And I could see, because I grew up without much technology. I was raised by grandparents, so I didn't have a phone until well after meme analysis had started.
Interesting.
I was not using any of it, but I saw the effect that it had on my friends and on people in school. So I knew it was important, and I'd been reading a lot of Jung and Freud and Crowley. So I was always interested in art and film and analyzing stuff like that. But I realized rather quickly that memes were also sort of this very essential unconscious expression, and that seemingly nobody else cared about it. It's something that so many people share, so many people laugh at, so many people have meme pages that it's worth looking at. It's worth paying attention to. It's not, because it's so current, it has to be viewed as meaningless. But that's just a problem with perspective.
No, totally agree with that. I think that a lot of things online don't get the kind of, even in the art world, I see that with like, people don't want to pay attention to Jake Paul or Trisha Paytas as artists, even though, or as filmmakers, even if they're outperforming traditional media. There's this kind of ambivalence towards things that are accessible because they're so accessible that it makes them look easy, I think, often. And is that something you think about with the videos? Do you try to make them reach as many people as possible, or do you have a targeted audience in mind when you're making them?
I have no targeted audience, but something that makes me think of is very much America versus Europe and the ideals and, things like technology and money, which have boomed here in a way that it never did in Europe. And they look down upon it. They look down upon us still. But, this is the way that traditional art looks at the internet, because it's like, well, anybody can do it. This shouldn't be this way. It should be. And I think that with Trisha Paytas and Jake Paul and even Alex Jones, it's like they go too far. They have no class. They have no limits. They don't know. Like we abide by a code.
Yeah.
We have to follow our rules to get our success. There's no reason that these idiots can do whatever they want and get more successful. It has to be looked down upon. But that's the trade-off, is that you get no establishment support in exchange for actually having a huge impact.
Yeah, no, Trisha's someone that I've been really interested in for a long time. And as kind of this mirror to how I saw her, I think I got into her like my freshman year in college. And I feel like she's this great void in that she's able to emote so much on camera in a way and like express all the ugliness of what it is to be human. And I don't think a lot of people even really understand that, like, to be able to even express those kinds of emotions on camera as an actor is difficult.
I mean, obviously, I think Marilyn Monroe and Trisha Paytas are very different people. But I think there is like something to be said about the social media influencer versus the celebrity. I don't know why, but Trisha reminds me kind of like of Marilyn, just being a sex symbol. But I think she's also conceived of as like way funnier and weirder and more random. And I wonder if that's just kind of, if you think that's a byproduct of like people having the power to post like for themselves rather than receiving like outside media attention, or if that's more of like a projection that we put, or if like celebrities and social media influencers are like fallible to different projections of people.
I think that online figures you can grow up with, I think that's a phenomena unique to a lot of the YouTube influencers. Like it's a sentiment that I've heard about a few where, oh, I watched them as a kid, they're still going, they're still somebody, and that has a whole different impact versus, oh, I like them in that movie. There's a different way that we relate to kind of a childhood entertainment and a figure, because there's also the parasocial element that's present online and is not generally present in traditional media unless you are schizophrenic.
Mm-hmm.
Like only a schizophrenic could watch a film and think, oh, Marilyn Monroe is in love with me.
Mm-hmm.
But people can get, they could comment with Trisha. They could DM.
Mm-hmm.
There's a degree of parasociality that's legitimate, like legitimately accessible online, that I think also fosters projection.
Mm-hmm.
Napoleon, he was beloved by his troops because he could remember every one of their names. And I think he could remember birthdays. He would, if he was out there, he'd say, oh, Jean-Pierre. And that person is going to fight to the death for Napoleon. Like, Napoleon knows me. He remembers me.
Huh. Yeah. No, it's funny you bring up Napoleon, because I was talking to Romy about, I just curated this show called War at my friend's gallery drama, and I felt afterwards kind of like Napoleon. Like I felt really powerful because so many people came, and they came out in support of this, something that I believe in, which I really wanted to talk about.
Believe in war?
Yes, I definitely believe in war, and I want to hear your stance on what war do you think is being fought right now online.
So it's something I like to talk about quite a bit, the Aeonic War, the war between the aeons, the war between traditional values from Pisces and new values, radical new values, between, I think, oftentimes gender roles and androgyny, between traditional media and digital media, between the physical world and the digital world. And there are legitimate points on both, but there's also the matter of fate, which is also true of war, that there simply is a vector. And the fact that it is a procession of aeons necessitates the triumph of the new over the old. That it's not, there is no possibility otherwise. It's simply a matter of ensuring the correct trajectory of the new.
So do you believe that this war is going to be fought spiritually or culturally first?
What's the difference?
I guess I feel like culturally I see it through marketing, and spiritually I see it more through the internet, which are kind of now the same thing. So there's not really a difference.
Do you know Bob? J.R. Bob Dobbs. He's got the pipe, smiling. It's like a 50s advertisement. It's called the Church of the Subgenius.
Amazing.
The Church of the Subgenius is kind of a joke cult, but I think it's actually one of the most accurate understandings of American spirituality. Bob, he is this ultimate salesman. He's a god. He became a god. He's like Christ. He was given divine revelation by Jehovah One, who is an alien space god, who's the god of the Bible, and so on, and like Jupiter and all that. So he gives the divine revelation to Bob, and it's really just make money and at the same time slack. Make as much money as possible while doing as little as possible, and have sex. And that's pretty much the ethos. It's like, don't be a genius, be a subgenius. Don't try hard, slack. And Bob, to me, is like marketing spirituality. Bob is it.
No, that's so true. I feel like that actually kind of relates to another question I had. Smoking, fucking, and making money. What do these things have in common?
It's funny. I have, when I was first traveling the country, I developed this American triad of virtues, the American virtues. And I think it was whoring, journeying, and having gamble. You know about, having gamble is kind of, it's kind of stupid. It's kind of an idiocy. It's a willingness to lose. I heard about it from Norm Macdonald. Norm Macdonald is a great gambler. And this really big gambler died. But he was famous for sucking. He was terrible. He just liked gambling. And when they asked Norm Macdonald for a quote, he said, well, he had a lot of gamble. He was willing to lose a lot. And so just smoking, fucking, and
making money.
So so to me, like journeying is smoking. Fucking is whoring, and making money is having gamble.
I like that.
I believe the book is called like The Sirens of Titan by Kurt Vonnegut. There's like one part in the book that I just think is really funny, in which basically like the way that Malachi has like received all his wealth, Malachi's the protagonist, is because his dad read the Bible and then invested in stocks that like were the abbreviations that like made up different like I'm Jewish. I don't know what it's called, but like the different lines of the Bible. And he like became like a billionaire that way. He also lost it all.
The son?
Yeah, the sun.
That happened. I was actually talking about that recently. That's a uniquely American trait, is children who cannot continue family lineage, because in Europe, it's a system of maintaining wealth and rearing children correctly. And here it's like, fuck you, die. Like, we'll give you money, but that's still saying, fuck you, die. Kids don't know how to use it. Most people don't know how to use money.
No, I think that money is one of those things that it's an interesting function of our society today. And I think it's become even more interesting with the internet. And I think something you talk about so much that I find really interesting is the disconnect the internet brings to the mind and body. And I think money can even enable that further with technology today. Like, you can essentially never get out of bed. If you have a remote job, you can just stay in bed, get all your food brought to you, but like make more money than anyone who's out there in the workforce ever. So what do you think that does to our society?
I think it's good. I think it should be accelerated because it is all leading toward, I foresee, an energetic elite where, yes, there is a monetary elite that are in bed, that are getting, their Uber Eats and their remote jobs, but they are spiritual failures. And the people who are vibing, who are out there doing, they are inheriting. They're inheriting the wealth, the true wealth of the world.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I think that the idea of vibes as a savior is something I've heard you talk about a lot. And how do you actuate that in your life? Like, what can people do that are watching this to bring about better vibes on a daily basis?
Well, I think one knows what vibes. One knows when they go about their days, when they are vibing. One must pursue that. I think because oftentimes we choose to not vibe. We choose, I think, in one of the last episodes we'd called the opposite of it morbing. No, the opposite of whimsy maxing, which is one of the roads to vibing, is opposed by morbing, by morbidity, by misery, and a choice to be miserable, which is always present. That's why I like things like randonauting. I like, just walking around. People I think used to get on buses and get on trains and just go.
Yes.
See what happens.
Just get off at a random stop.
Yeah. That is vibing.
Yeah.
And that's because it's a willingness to throw out conscious intention, because the vibes are generally not conscious. The vibe is intuitive.
So what role do you feel art has in this future that's vibe-based? Because I think art right now in America, it's in this interesting point where I don't think we have like a defined art movement going on, but I think I'm really hopeful for a new avant-garde, something to shake it up. And I think that can start online. Do you see, I'm just curious what your thoughts on art in general are.
I think art is a materialization of vibe. Good art is a materialization of vibe in such a way that it can be transmitted to a degree. The vibe can be transmitted through art, through good art.
Yeah.
Is there a particular art movement that you resonate with? Or
I guess a few. There's like aesthetic vibes, and then I guess vibing vibes, like things I use, things that are like materially relevant, which is of course like the aesthetics of the occult. It's very significant to my lived life. Visually, I'm very moved by expressionism, surrealism, things like that.
I had a feeling you'd be into surrealism. Yeah. I told Romy, I was like, he's going to be into surrealism. I just can tell. Yeah, I'm an artist, and I think your work online has been really inspiring as an artist, because I think as an artist on the internet, there's not a lot of people that talk about the connective potential of the internet. in a positive way. And how can we use, I think one of my missions online is to use the internet to connect with more people and to spread good vibes. Like, that's pretty much just it. And I wonder how you think about internet addiction and how we can fight it.
So, and I think a lot of people read my channel as a very negative reading of the internet.
Oh, interesting.
When it's not, because it is ultimately a recognition of the potential of it, rather than an acceptance. I never say stop. It's always a matter of intentional usage, of vital usage. Like, I think tools like Randonautica, brilliant and astounding. YouTube channels like Meme Analysis, extraordinarily useful.
Let's go.
What it is. All of these things. Not really, though. I think videos are kind of lame. I don't watch many videos.
Oh,
I like,
interesting.
there are some websites that I like. I like tools online. Like, there's something I've been using. Do you know the cut up method? Like William S. Burroughs and Brian.
Oh,
Tyson,
yeah.
They have, cut up generators.
Oh, that's
online,
cool.
Which is fun.
That's fun.
That's useful. But I think there's also a huge misunderstanding among the majority of people, which is social media is the internet. Social media is not and it never used to be the face of it.
No.
And the internet will be more without it. That there is so much more to explore and to utilize than social media. Because, and I do think, like, most of this talk of the disconnect from the body, of the, it's inducing an asociality, inducing almost a kind of pseudo autism. All of that is a product largely of social media. And maybe pornography. But the vast majority of the internet as a store of information, a store of tools, I simply think it does not have the potential to capture people in the same, or video games actually number one. I wasn't thinking about it because I never play video games, and I've kind of avoided people that do.
Yeah.
But I know that is actually, that and porn are number one. Social media is kind of like normal people suffer from it, so it's on the mind. But that's kind of secondary to things like video games and porn, which really, really capture people.
Yeah, kind of thinking of like the internet as like a microcosm for life, and if social media is kind of like a really debaucherous forum where everyone shows up, I think I'm kind of curious to hear, like, why do you think, what gets perverted online versus real life when interacting with so many people or when interacting socially?
You can never hear somebody fart on social media. You can never smell somebody's bad breath. You can never see them fail in quite the way that you can in person.
Yeah.
It is so terribly curated that one even begins to believe it. When you know the people, you begin to believe it. And then even more people believe it about themselves. And we also have to keep in mind, I think with the micro celebrities, it's even more fascinating because you can there's lurkers lurking on social media. I think, in the past that really just wouldn't have happened because who are you going to lurk? It's either like a true private account from a weirdo, of which there would be very few, and most people are like, look at my dog, and now with the onset of the parasocial and the micro celebrities, people are willing to like lurk these characters. It becomes a form of entertainment rather than a social medium.
Yeah, I think lurking can be a really, I guess from my experience as a lurker, can be a really disempowering position to put yourself in because you're mentally contributing to this narrative that has no existence anywhere outside of your mind. And I think my way out of lurking was through shit posting, which I've actually seen a lot of I've talked to a lot of people that relate to that they'll have private accounts that like maybe 10 of their friends follow and they'll just shit post on those. But I think that's almost sometimes worse for yourself because like taking the mental stuff and then it's making it schizophrenizing it into like this. Like I remember there was points where I was talking a lot on my Instagram stories, and one day I just looked at my phone and I'm like, I'm just talking to myself. Like no one's here.
when the viewer count drops, it's excessive,
and you're like, ugh. I'm like, what am I doing? How do we make social media a better place? And is it possible to make it a better place?
We should get rid of comments. Lurking is more noble than commenting. The commenter is the lowliest form of internet use.
I agree with that.
The poster is the peak. The poster is the ideal.
I like that.
And one should, perhaps it's like a food pyramid. There's like, one has to be like 90% posting. Yeah. Maybe 10% and then 10% lurking. And zero commenting.
Zero. I agree.
You DM. Never comment.
Yeah. Unless it's like a friend, you're just dropping some heart emojis. That's okay. But commenting is, I think it's especially apps like TikTok that incentivize commenting and hate commenting. That's when I've been at my lowest on social media.
Do you have a TikTok?
I'm TikTok sober. I had a period of time where I was a hater on TikTok in 2020. I admit to it. I left hate on people. It was a low time in my life. I am TikTok sober for the past year and a half. So I haven't been on, I think short form video is like some of the worst way to receive information, especially when you're not making a choice about it and you're just scrolling. Do you agree with that?
Yes, but at the same time, I'm willing to utilize it.
That's how I feel too.
Wait, so that kind of reminds me. I wasn't thinking about using this quote at all in this capacity, but you say that like the commenter is like the lowliest form, which makes me think about the interaction between poster and commenter / lurker. So I'm just going to read the quote. The painting will not exist. The painting will not exist if the viewer does not do half the work. That's by the painter Pierre Bernard. How do you think that relates to online posts? Is the relationship similar or very different?
There was a time, but I think at this point, the media moves too quickly. There is no longer that real ability of a viewer. Or at least we have the worst viewers ever now. Viewers are incapable of the kind of close attention that paintings require. The kind of attention that one can pay in the presence of a piece. That's something I think about a lot, actually, is like artists, you used to have to go to a museum to see a piece. And it was radical that we had like etchings of famous paintings. It used to be very difficult to see art, to look at art. Sometimes I think it's very good that we have access to all of that now. And other times it's more obvious that it is detrimental in that people cannot devote the same kind of attention. So that might be true of painting. It was true at a time, but we don't have that kind of viewer today to do half the work.
Do you think posts have or can have an aura in the way a painting does?
In a profoundly ephemeral way.
I agree. Yeah, I think that sorry?
Just one.
Yeah.
One thing. The most important meme, I think, and it's one that is universally known, is LOL. And when a post truly makes one laugh out loud, that is like the internet orgasm. That's like the LOL. Important in terms of a post mattering, of having a vibe that is more than ephemeral. Yeah, I think that one thing that's disappointing about art on social media, there's a lot of things, but I think one thing is that it doesn't allow the viewer to have the experience with the work. And I've noticed as an artist, more and more art is in service to the image than it is to the viewer in person. Like a lot of artists, I think, make work
that almost you never even see it in person. You just see it through online. And I think it kind of it creates a disconnect from what art is. And I think what I want to do with social media is somehow help people connect with their own abilities to create art and to encourage people to go out and see art and be in contact with art, because I think art has a profound healing power. Do you feel the same way?
I think that the failure of most of the media is a lack of acknowledgement of the McLuhan idea that the medium is the message.
Mm.
We are stuck with painters and poets and, these filmmakers. These are dead online.
Mm-hmm.
When it's like a freshwater fish.
Yeah.
In saltwater. Those mediums do not work online. They simply don't. The post is the medium, or YouTube or TikTok is the medium. The internet is a medium in itself, and the failure to adjust accordingly, it's a profound indictment of artists, I think.
Mm-hmm.
There's a huge, huge failure on the part of artists, and it's terribly disappointing to me because I see immense potential. And I think one of the only people who did it really well, and I'm very grateful I got to work with this person, is Joseph Matheny.
Mm.
Do you know John Titor? Mm-hmm. It was a time traveler poster.
Whoa.
And it was real. People thought it was real. People thought they were a real
That's amazing.
person. It was him.
Ah.
And then there's a thing called ARG,
mm-hmm.
alternate reality game,
mm-hmm.
which, again, an indictment of idiotic internet artists, has been perverted mm-hmm. and degraded to such an extent that it's unrecognizable. But it started out, he created this method. Do you know Robert Anton Wilson? He wrote Prometheus Rising.
Oh, yeah.
He was an editor of Playboy and all that. But he kind of worked it with Matheny. And they called them living books.
Mm.
And they just disseminated information that was false. They formed a narrative that could be read as if it was true. And many people believed in it, became obsessed with it. That is art.
I totally agree.
So something like, incorrect take, but Q is far closer to art than any internet painter. And it has a more profound spiritual effect on the viewer than, all of these kind of like conspiracies, left or right, are better art, much better art, because they have a lasting impact.
I totally agree with that. I think that posting as a performance and posts as art is something that I really connect with and try to explore with my page, The Real, Real, Real. I started off kind of as an archive account, and then I started I took down all my posts and I just started smashing together images I knew would algorithmically do well and imbuing them with messages that I wanted the followers to get, and then slowly kind of introducing myself as a character to that madness. But then I started this group called Content Warriors, which is how I met Romy. And we run a page called Narrative Navigation, where we live on a ship and we sail the seas of the internet in search of story. And I feel like through...
I didn't know anything. I wish I'd known this. I like that. I like that idea.
Yeah, I think just trying to find ways to post. I think posting can be really freeing. It can be almost like a pleasurable catharsis.
I'm a huge fan of of Instagram stories.
Yes.
I use that more than any other internet tool.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm when I'm unhappy, I stop posting on them. Like, it is generally, it's like, oh, well, I've done something good. I took a good picture. I will share this. It's like it is an expression of joy to me generally.
Yeah.
Like a hunter-gatherer.
Yes. Like, whereas you can't do that with a lot of other mediums. Mm-hmm. I think also part of what makes it good is that it appreciates the nature of the post as ephemeral. Like, it's, again, treating it as the medium. It's like, this is a post, this is a story. I don't expect it to last. It will make the impact in this brief time that it has to make.
Exactly.
And I think that is good.
I think it's special because it's both ephemeral, but it's also forever available through the archive. So
for you,
yeah.
Yes.
I will spend probably way too long looking at my own story posts from 2 years ago.
Oh,
and,
interesting.
Chortling at myself for what I thought was funny 2 years ago. Yeah, I think it's awesome to have access to earlier versions of yourself and to see the posts that resonated, how much you changed over that amount of time. And then no one else has to see it. It's a kind of cool to have for yourself.
I find one of the fascinating things, I don't know, maybe not famous enough, but people make stories of you, and if you don't look, you never know what it was. There's something very interesting about that. It's like people were looking at me or something related to me, and I will never know what that was.
Oh, when they post it and then it's in your message request, and you never see it.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I was curious about how you deal with Chris Gabriel, the person in real life, and then having kind of micro online celebrity. Has that affected your daily life in any way?
Yes. I think I'd had a very established social group in high school and after. And I met my best friend through the channel, and we just started traveling. So it was a complete upending of the way that I lived through a connection made online, and kind of with the intention of our shared work on the internet. So undoubtedly it had a huge impact, and it is difficult to kind of say, I'm going to sow my seeds in a completely uncharted, what is the word? Not unexpected. What is it? I don't know. It's impossible to navigate. It's impossible to know what will happen, which is true of everything, but it's especially true of the internet.
Yeah.
But willing to throw the courage there, to sow the seeds there. And so, yes, it had a very profound impact on my social life.
So you're from New Jersey originally?
Yes.
And so you've just been traveling you're only 21?
23.
You're 23, wait.
Thank you.
But still really young for someone as wise as you are. So you started meme analysis when you were how old?
19.
19. And then
But the first one was made when I was 15.
Oh, whoa. Interesting. And then you've been traveling since when? When did you pick up?
21.
21. Wow. And where have your travels taken you?
Well, I've lived in LA for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then here. And we like to drive cross country.
Oh, wow.
We do kind of loops and circuits around.
That's awesome.
So I guess bi-coastal, but traveling that way, not just flying.
So are you in New York permanently now, or no. How long do you think you'll be here?
I don't know. It depends. It depends on the vibes.
What's your favorite place so far?
In New York?
Or no, just on your travels.
I like Tennessee.
Tennessee's cool.
I think Tennessee is one of my favorite states, undoubtedly. I like Nashville a lot. Even though Nashville is kind of a horrific downtown, I like it. It's a cool place. And I understand why it's a center of music. What's conducive about the environment for music. I don't like Texas very much.
What's your favorite part of New York?
Greenpoint. I like Greenpoint a lot. I think Greenpoint's very sweet. I like the radio park. It's one of my favorite places in the world. I like I don't know, St. Mark's Place, because that's where I went when I was younger. I thought it was very cool. I like the Cloisters.
Cloisters is really
one of the
cool.
best places on earth.
Yeah.
What makes you vibe with a place? Like, do you think there's kind of like a precondition there where there's something spiritually special about the location? Or do you think like the people, architecture, like the more social like contributions affect the vibe?
There's an idea that I'm sure that somebody else has talked about it, but I call it futurity, where you go somewhere or you meet somebody and it's immediately pleasurable or intense because unconsciously you can sense future events with them or at that place. Like that there's going to be a future history, that in the future there will be a history and that it just started. When I get that sense at a place, I pay attention to it.
I really like that.
What do you think makes New York a special place for artists?
I think it used to be. I don't know if that's if it's true right now.
Yeah.
I think that New York is kind of overrun.
Yes.
I think that it's like economically kind of going insane.
Yeah.
I mean, inflation is very bad. I don't think that the real artists can afford to live here.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like, I think I don't know, it's something I noticed in a lot of places where it's like it's students and millennials. Those are the people who can afford to be in the cities. And so the lucky students, I guess, make it.
Yeah.
But generally, unless they have parents, are not going to be able to afford it. But again, this is the promise of the internet, that you can make the money quick and you can afford to live in cities by your work alone. And this is a pipe dream, and nobody listening should do it. It doesn't, because it's very hard, but it can happen.
Yeah. No, I think that as someone that's like grown up in New York and lived here for over 20 years, it definitely is not an easy place to be an artist, but I'm really hopeful with spaces like Drama Gallery and DIY projects that we can foster some community and get an art scene going, because I think it's important to have all of the galleries are here and they're looking for people. And I think that what's missing is group. I think that I've been reading a lot about the 1950s art movement in New York, and specifically like Cage, Rauschenberg, Merce Cunningham, and that kind of collaboration, I think, is the only way we'll be able to create a vibe here again, is working together. And so
let's talk about that. I think about that a lot as well. I was just talking with a friend yesterday, and I was saying that individual creating in isolation, is kind of a baseline for artistry. Like, if you are a creative person, and you're alone, you will create. It simply will happen. If you are with the wrong people, you won't create. That's the negative. And then if you are with the right people, you will create much more than the baseline. But it's extremely difficult to do that, to find those right people to do that. And I've had it. I've had points in life where I was around the right people and the right things occurred, where artistry could happen in that way. But a lot of the work is also done in isolation.
yes.
But yes, absolutely. I think that the fostering of groups and group creative environments, I mean, I think that was Warhol's greatest. The factory is the great art.
Exactly.
The factory is the great thing. And the production of artists, the factory is not only producing Warhol pieces, but Warhol people. And we have that now in the form of the hype house.
Yes.
New York does not have hype houses though.
No.
Just LA has.
LA.
Yeah.
The influence of culture in New York is a lot more isolated. I think it's more like Soho girlies doing their own
influencer residencies.
Yes.
Like, there are writer residencies, artist residencies. There needs to be influencer residencies to produce such things. Or not just influencers, but digital artists who are, again, willing to go past the traditional bounds of mediums.
Yeah, I think digital art I agree with it, but I also think it can be kind of in person energetically low. Like I really do believe in I went to RISD, and one of the principles there was you have to put in at least 10 hours into a piece before you can show it to anyone. And I think that even if it's spiritual time, that art needs to have some connection to your body in order for other people to feel that when they see it. And I wonder with digital art, I think I can do that through social media at its best, but in person, a lot of the time falls flat. Do you agree with that?
Yes, and that was actually the caveat that just made me go, there needs to be like a vibe test before you could even meet somebody, before you could do a residency. Because I'm very interested in people who want to meet up with me.
Yeah.
I'm always fascinated because I'm like, why? What is wrong? There's something wrong. Like, what is wrong with you? And sometimes, because you've been vibe checked by it was a friend that I'd met. And I met her at a restaurant. I'd walked in.
Wait, is this Cafe Mogador?
Yeah, I was at Mogador. And I was like, oh, what a pretty girl. And then when I came back in, because I guess we had to wait, she was like, are you meme analysis? And I was like, yes. Yes, I am. And she'd met you.
Yeah.
And she'd said that you DM'd me, and I'd remembered the DM. And I remember you followed me immediately when I'd moved back to LA this year.
So funny. Yeah. I found your videos through my partner, Jeff, who showed me your videos and was like, this guy, he just got recommended them randomly this year. And he's a painter, and he was like, he gets it. And he uses a lot of symbols and is really into Jungian philosophy. And I don't know, the moment I started watching your videos, I was like, where has this been all my life? Like, this is everything. But yeah.
To talk about the symbols, I have my symbol cards.
Yes.
I'd be happy to give readings at some point, perhaps at the end.
That'd be good.
I've tried to condense a lot of that symbolic learning into this.
So tell us more about the deck.
So this is meant to kind of be... So I'd been studying Chinese. I'd been studying Chinese through the ideogrammic method, which is like Fenellosa and Pound. And their reading of Chinese as sets of images, and that Chinese characters are poetic images, where the relationship between, because it's made up of smaller pictures, they're called radicals, and I think it's like 218 radicals, and every word is simply a combination of those base images. And I recognized very quickly that reading of symbolism could be applied to Western esoteric symbolism. So I applied it to Western symbolism, where you can read, I don't know if you can say, but you can read, salt as the stopped. It's like, it looks like a sign, like, do not go, do not move. Sagittarius obviously is literally an arrow.
Me.
This I don't know if you've ever seen a moon phase watch. They're called bosom. They're bosoms. Because it's like, there's like
two
breasts, and there's two moons on a sphere that revolve.
Mm.
And it looks exactly like Cancer. Oh. And Cancer, of course, is ruled by the moon.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's also the pinchers, so it's both. Mm-hmm. Fire, you get a lighter out, heat rises, flames go up, and so on. It's all rather direct, symbolic things. And I find that that's just not an element of the occult that is looked at. The symbols are kind of just taken as letters. They're not read as ideograms, which I think is the true significance of them, which is why I took the tarot, which is really just very, very advanced, detailed ideograms, sets of pictures to have one poetic meaning, and reduced it to its lowest form, its simplest, most effective form.
That's so interesting.
I have a question for you that's not the most related, but is symbolic. So something that I have been noticing, honestly, probably, I thought it was over like the last like 2 to 4-ish months. And then I looked at my own Instagram stories, and then turns out it's been over a year. But I see like infinity signs, like probably at least like 4 times a day. I really, really resonate with that symbol. And I think it keeps on popping up for me in unexpected ways. I was wondering if there's like a symbol that you encounter in daily life, not online or online, that you resonate with, or like that feels kind of picked out for you.
I go through phases where a symbol is really important to me, and then I usually shed it. I'd say as of late, I'll find the card, but it's Neptune.
Interesting.
Neptune was very significant this year. I'd been studying. Okay, here's one too. I had the Ankh. I had a custom pair of boots made recently, and I had the Ankh stitched into it.
Wow. That's epic.
Because the Ankh is a sandal. It's not just a key, but it's a sandal. So, and it means life. And life is movement. So I have that put on the boots. But Neptune has confused me, which is why it's been so significant. I found it very confusing. There we go. So it is kind of simple. It's just a trident. But astrological Neptune has so little to do with the god Neptune, Poseidon, that I've been averse to the new planets, the outer planets in astrology, because they are new, because they were named by scientists. So there's kind of like, how do we know that this is accurate? It wasn't named by magicians. It's not ancient.
True.
But Neptune, it took time. But I figured out. So Neptune the god, to give like an epithet, he's the earth shaker. He's very angry. He's a very angry god. He's very violent. And Neptune the planet is like dreamy, druggy, illusory. So there is the only relation is water.
Interesting.
It's like watery. But I was really curious why. And I found that what I think is the true origin of the planet Neptune, which is a French name for a type of fairy. They're called Neptunes. Now, when you think about fairies, you probably think about little people. It was not that way.
They're big fairies.
In the past, they were all big. They were the size of people, but they were just magical people. So like Morgane Le Fay would look like a normal person, but she is a fairy. Merlin, in some ways, is a fairy because he is a magical person. But the first ever tiny fairies are called Neptunes.
Wow.
And they live in water, but they come out to attack people and trick people. They trick people. They will like go into the ears of horses to like get them thrown off. They will, they're tricky. They're just doing little tricky things. And
they're whimsy, Max.
They truly. This book by Thomas, it's called The Fairy Mythology by Thomas Keatley. It's like one of the greatest books ever. And you look it up and there's like no information on it. The only information on Neptunes as fairies is from, I think it's like a 13th century book. I think it's called Otia Imperialis. It's like for the amusement of the emperor. And it was literally written by like a court philosophers, like stories and little histories. Apparently, Liebens translated it and is like, this is a fucking stupid book. But it is the origin of the first ever tiny fairy. So it is significant.
Interesting. Very interesting. So you mentioned science and not always vibing with science. I heard in another video you mentioned that you don't believe in evolution.
This is a comment I made in my last video, and I didn't even say that I don't believe. I said I don't believe all of it.
Okay.
And I think that I think that every scientific concept is useful insofar as it is intuitively true and artistically meaningful. If it is detrimental, which is why I think the vast majority of neuroscience is nonsense, because it is generally not helpful. A lot of medicine also unhelpful, or at least a lot of the way that we have done things. And it's the same politically. People, because we are unconscious beings, the vast majority of our products that are made unconsciously are just sexual torture devices. So something like
that's real.
Chemotherapy. It's like, well, what if we just tortured them? I'm sure that other things could have been looked into more effectively. We settle for things that should not be settled for. We settle for shock treatment. We settle for whips and chains. And people being chained up in prisons lasted, forever. It still is going on. There are just things that we accept because of almost innate, current, imbued nature, sadism, and masochism in the culture. So no, I'm not willing to accept a lot of science as acceptable when it is still largely a device of the unconscious. But evolution, I find it very interesting. I think that there is a lot of truth to it. But I also do believe that there is sort of a divine direction, undoubtedly. Whether or not I'm not a Christian, but there is undoubtedly divine form and intention in the outcomes.
I like what you said earlier about neuroscience. I majored in psychology, and I was very disillusioned throughout my entire college career because I wanted to study psychology because I was interested in Freud and Jung. And then when I actually got there, it was very meticulous data that to me, I got involved in research, and to me just kept on repeatedly showing me how fake and untrustworthy science is and how completely manipulated it is by human beings. Is that a reason why you choose to analyze memes spiritually rather than ever going into statistics?
Statistics are bullshit. Statistics is one of the ultimate bullshit methodologies. Even though I like gathering them on my fans. I have a bunch of personality tests. I love to look at the statistics there.
We took your personality tests.
But not all of them, I bet, because a lot of them are no longer up. But I could send them to you.
We'll take them.
I can also just give them to you.
Judge us in real life.
They're super fucking crazy. They're really good. One is fetishism. I created a typology of fetishism, which I think is one of my best works. And then my conspiracy test, which is also a great work, my astrological corresponding of conspiracies.
Can I ask, how are you making these surveys by yourself?
Yes.
So how do you create the items? Are you looking at science, or are you looking at theory or intuition? What does how do you decide what goes in and what's relevant?
That's a great question. That is a really good question. I think I have a Virgo moon. I am an unconscious systematizer. My unconscious naturally produces systems. So I am always forming typologies. That's how I like to look at the world. I like to build typologies because I like to be able to express extremely complex things to people in simple but meaningful ways. I find that the occult provides perhaps the great springboard of archetypes. So a base 4 personality test, or a base 12. But I guess the most common is the base 16 with the Myers-Briggs. My main test is a base 16, like Myers-Briggs. It functions similarly to Myers-Briggs. my fetish test is base 4, which is after the elements, the 4 elements. The conspiracy one is like, it's very big because it's, 7 and 12. So it's like, I don't know, 100 something. I don't do math. But the typologies can be made meaningful. I think in some ways, like, that's why I think sorry, I have to adjust again. It's important to be in the vibing positions.
Exactly.
See, talk about the failure of science. We have not perfected chairs even.
No. Okay, I was looking at Rhonda Kellogg was this woman that did a lot of research in children's art, and she designed special chairs that are adjustable that you can build for your children, so that because most chairs in school are all the same size, but children aren't the same size. So she had this theory that kids learn better if they're in the right size chair, and that each parent should make a special chair for their child to bring with them to school. And I thought that was so interesting, like the idea that the thing that you're made to sit in school is not meant for your body. Therefore, it can cause one kid to be more restless than another. And that might just be because of the way that they're sitting. They're not getting that support.
That's actually really funny. I always found school desks to be one of the most comfortable and a place where I read books really well in school desks. I write really well at school desks, but it was particularly to go against teachers. I liked sitting in those. I guess it's contextual, deeply contextual. I don't know if I had a school desk at home, but I like being able to put the feet up. You can curl into a ball. I don't know. I think that chairs. There's a lot of work to be done. I'm not a chair maker. But if I could develop an ideal chair, by God, I would.
There was a thing, I don't know why so many people at my school did this growing up. I went to public school. They would get floss and
cut the chairs apart.
Fucking
awesome.
And then your ass would have to just sit in the unit for 8 hours, and you can't complain because that's your chair. I don't know, kids are awesome. It's kind of funny.
I don't know if you've seen. I don't know how much of the channel you've seen. Are you aware of the Dark Brothers?
Mm-mm.
They're part of my my canon. They're my best, some of my besties. And I always think about when they were in high school, they would destroy desks for fun. They would. I think they said that they'd had over 25. They destroyed over 25 desks. And yeah, I love that. I also think public school is really beautiful in that it is a place where you can do very insane. Oh, I actually want to talk about this. The vibes are so important, and public school is an ultimate test of vibes.
1,000,000%.
Because there are kids who could shoot a teacher and be like, "Ah, Jimmy's at it again," and another kid looks at another kid wrong and is expelled. That is because it sounds cruel, but it's natural vibe selection.
100%.
I did no work at all. I demanded that they buy books, that the school library buy books for me, and they did. We had, in terms of a public high school, we probably had one of the largest collections of Jung, Nietzsche, and Nick Land. They ordered Nick Land for me because they don't care.
That's awesome.
It's what are they going to spend that budget on anyway?
That's
for
awesome.
The library budget, nobody's reading books. I was probably one of the only people reading books at the time. And Aleister Crowley. I ordered everything I wanted, and then I stole it when I graduated, and nobody cared because nobody's going to read it. So. That was what I used it for, and then I did no work in school, of course. But I was studying. I did the large amount of my learning and studying in school, in high school, simply because I had the time every day where I was forced to be in a building, but I could kind of do what I wanted to, and I would read extensively. Because I do think that it's detrimental to read when you could be living. But if you're stuck, I haven't had a normal job, but I'm sure I would read if I did.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I feel like instead of reading, most people when they're stuck scroll now, which I think is...
And that was why it was good I didn't have a phone in high school.
Yeah. I mean, that's crazy. What if you had a phone? What would... there'd be no this conversation. I think that actually sometimes people DM me on Instagram and they're like, I'm considering going phoneless for my senior year. Do you think I should do it? I'm like, yes. Like, detach. Because I'm 28, so I went into high school. My first phone in high school was a BlackBerry. And then iPhones were introduced to like teenagers during that time in social media. I was on Facebook, but social media became virtualized and pocketized while I was in high school. So it didn't affect me. And then when I got to college is when I became more interested in it as a place of art and just interested in YouTubers as artists, and kind of became obsessed with YouTube. I was into YouTube as a kid, but I don't know. I feel like if I had had a phone when I was younger, I don't know if I would have explored the way I do now. How do you think people can combat that with the phones? Like, how do we get off the phones?
I put out a video recently where I say the phone should be put in black and white. Limit the effectiveness of the visuals. I think, really just making a less impactful experience in terms of like the hooks that are used. It's like, generally in nature, color is so vital to survival, but now it's the opposite. Now our senses are used against us. One of a quote, this I don't know, some silly thing I say, but rather than, if you want to imagine the future, imagine the boot stomping on a human face forever and ever. I say, if you want to imagine the future, imagine a road where every sign is wrong. Like everything, every bit of information is wrong. Every piece of stimulus is incorrect.
That's what the phone is.
Yes.
Interesting.
I've been just selfishly curious to hear about what you think the future of the internet holds, because I am a hopeful person, and I think I've been, a bit doom-pilled recently, and I was just wondering if you have any perspective on that.
I think that it will advance understandings of things in a good way. Something that I foresee that I really want is for an objective, and it would probably have to be AI or something, but we could pretty quickly prove astrology, pretty quickly establish the base archetypes, simply through, so this is all I would do. If at a certain point, I don't even think the machines would have to be that advanced, but if it could simply connect, you take every biography, everything ever written by and about people born in certain times, and you see what words are used most to describe them or that they themselves used. Undoubtedly, there would be correlations, and you could very quickly, objectively understand the zodiac. You could very quickly and objectively establish, and that's the work I do, just person to person. Like I look at poetry a lot, and I see selfishly what positions of the zodiac produce work that I like. Like many of my favorite poets and favorite writers have similar zodiacal charts.
Interesting.
Almost all the writers are Libra, with Mercury, Scorpio, and Venus, Libra.
Interesting.
So they have my Mercury and Venus, but a Libra sun. I'm a Sagittarius. But I find it is truly, it is too much to be a coincidence.
That's funny. I was actually maybe a week ago making a list of all of my favorite artists' zodiac signs and their suns and moons, trying to see what the correlations would be. And I feel like often I see it in the balance of, I'm definitely not anywhere near your level of knowledge in astrology, but I think through my Tess understanding of it, I can intuitively, I can tell when there's an artist that I'm like, oh, you must have a balanced chart in a certain kind of specific way. Like, I feel like a lot of artists I like have Leo placements, like strong Leo placements, strong Scorpio placements. Libra also I see a lot. And it's interesting to think about why that's so ignored in society.
I think that there was a huge fall from grace because of the ubiquity of astrology in the past, and its relation with the court, with the royal, that enlightenment demands the destruction. It is also a absolute denial of all men are created equal. All men are created. That can be said. All men are created, and that is equal. It is equal that they are all created. But all men are not created equally. And astrology, I do think, is large. Like, that is, I think, there was a silly tweet, and it was like, why is it that autistic men have this massive blind spot for the one thing that would actually make them understand people? Like, they're willing to analyze insane, like, the incel physiognomy and psychology. If they were just understanding astrology, they would likely become far more palatable people. Because, there was another one that I'd read. It was like, if socializing is I'm autistic, but socializing is my special interest.
That's how I feel.
Being social is my special interest. And I find magic to be a really brilliant social tool. I think the occult, because I'm really only interested in going deep with people. I really cannot stand the mundane subjects. And I'm able to go very deep with people very quickly when I, offer a card reading or read a palm or something like that. And it's not like, I think a lot of men do that sexually, but I do it to everybody.
My advanced stats professor, definitely autistic, highly rational, hated everything that the girlies loved, which was astrology. And I think a lot of people in my class expressed that they liked astrology, so then he made it a task to squander that passion and joy. And our assignment was literally to find why there are no statistical correlations in astrology, which I just found terrible.
It's not true, though.
Yeah.
There is research into it that there are objective correlations with the movement of certain planets. I'm not gonna get angry about it, but
he gave a completely superficial also way of doing it. He was just pick he picked the celebrities and he was you see, I don't know. Anyway,
it's also almost always a true lack of understanding on the part of critics to even grasp the basics of what astrology is. They're probably only looking at sun signs. They're not taking into account what a chart is, what it meant. I don't know. I'm not going to.
Yeah. It's a refusal to engage. It's supposedly intellectual, but lacks complete curiosity.
That's the defining trait, is it not? That is what academic expertise is.
Yeah.
It's a lack of curiosity and a willingness to commit to a narrative and to destroy anything that would possibly provide an alternative view.
Yeah. I was wondering, connecting that to kind of the War of Aeons, I just remember this was while we were in online school. Everyone in the Zoom chat was blowing up about that assignment. And it's what you said earlier, kind of, if I'm understanding this correctly, this emphasis on empiricism and rationality and going against astrology seems like a generational, or maybe not generational, but a divide between eons. And I feel seeing the reaction to that kind of proved that this new generation is willing to fight the old tradition. Do you think there's anything there? Do you think we're constantly going to be fighting between return for tradition and an innovation, or do you think do you think innovation is possible, or a true meaning to true connection to the past, or is it just going to be back and forth forever?
Both. Pound's line, make it new. The process, the ideal process is taking the old and making it new. It's not destroying the old entirely. It's not throwing it out. It's not ignoring it. It's making it new. That is the way ahead. I also don't think that astrology is necessarily a generational problem. I think it's been a problem it's not as if it was believed by everybody in the old days either. I do think it will become kind of an objective. I think the recognition of things like the unconscious also will be more objectively understood, which is another thing that could rather easily be objectively proven. I think textual analysis will be looked back on as one of the most vital tools. That it will be, I'm sure it already is happening, but once it is once it's available on the internet, to see like what has every single person with this chart, with this set of placements, what words do they use most frequently? Because there simply would be correlations. Or with the unconscious, like the people raised by this family dynamic, what words do they use most frequently? And so on. All of that at some point I do think will be objectively proven, and I think that it's extremely likely that it already Facebook likely has like the best astrological data. US Census likely has the best astrological data. And I'm positive that it's utilized. It's simply not something that could be rolled out and say like, oh, here it is, because it would also be very ugly.
Yeah. I was thinking like, who could do that research? I'm very like the idea of institutional research I've witnessed. I just can't imagine anything genuinely like innovative being published. But I'm sure that there are like the companies we expect to least have the most data and are just not willing to share it. I
think it's also at this point not that hard because so much of all of it is already online and public. Even if it was just an analysis of public domain writers, that kind of research could be done very quickly.
So what is it like to be a wizard today?
That's a good question. Good. It is good. I feel blessed to be romantic. I feel blessed to have a view of life that is not destroying itself too badly. Sometimes we go a bit far, but I'm happy, and I'm also happy that I can bring it to other people. This is something I will say about being a wizard today. And like with the very first question is like the difference between Chris Gabriel, the God Disc, and meme analysis. I think that the meme analysis character is so particular, and that I think my poetic works and even just my works as a party goer, as like a socialite, is a much more romantic art. Meme analysis is very much ideological. Like I am very intent on my ideas spreading through that means, and it's worked to a degree. But as for like the romantic and the good way of living, it is not expressed on the channel, and I don't think it should be.
Yeah, I was interested with that. In watching your videos, I think sometimes you allude to, I think especially in like your touch grass video, which I think was the first video on your channel that really connected with me emotionally, because I really agree with touching grass and connecting in nature and connecting with your body. I think those I see as ways out, but then a lot of it is ideological, like rhetoric that allows viewers to contextualize the symbols they see. And do you want your voice as a figure online to be kind of this like encouraging of people to get into their bodies, or do you not see that as part of your mission?
Mixed. I think a feeling that I feel often is like Cain. Am I my brother's keeper? Like, why should I be a savior? Well, and it sounds so narcissistic, but this is the truth, is that everybody online is made into one. Everybody. It's not special. That's something, and this is one of the silliest things about the egos of social media creators, is that the audience will, every single channel gets the comment that you're the greatest channel ever, you're the best, you saved my life. Everybody gets that. It's not special. I'm sure that there are types of channels that get it more often, but it's really not special, and it's really not often true. It can be. I like, if I meet a person, or if I'm sent like a really good letter, but those kind of meaningless comments are meaningless. And it's those meaningless hordes that want you to save them. But they look for Jesus Christ in every possible public figure. They want Christ, and they want to crucify them. Never forget. They want Christ, but they want to crucify them. They're looking for the Christ to crucify, which is why anybody who commits to their bit is crucified. And I mean, what a profound idiocy of someone like Pederson, who's like, oh, I am going to save the boys, and he's crucified. Yeah. And that's what he was asking for. I would never, ever place myself in a position where saving people and helping people was my primary goal.
Interesting.
Because they will crucify you.
That's so true. Do you think that's because celebrity has taken the place of religious figures in today's culture, that we look to them for so much moral reckoning? Because I think that Hollywood is really this very recent invention, and our kind of general lack of faith in America, it seems like, has kind of turned into this obsession with pop culture.
Celebrity as such is an extraordinarily modern invention. I think it's arguable that it started in the 1890s with Gabriel and it was an intentional creation, and it was utilizing heroes. So in I guess what do they call it? Neoplatonism. In the works of Umbilicus, you see these divisions of divinity, where it's like daemons, which are like guardian angels, spirits of things, which are pretty high. There's gods as such, kind of angels and demons as such, and heroes. The hero as the basis for celebrity. The hero is divine. This is something I think that a lot of modern readers don't grasp about figures like Odysseus and Jason and Hercules. They are worshipped. There are cults surrounding them and their deeds, their acts. It is a religious devotion. It's not, oh, what a fun story. Which is also, I think, why the obsession with Marvel and DC and Star Wars is in no way new or surprising. It's in fact foolish to imagine that those kind of stories would have any other effect. So the celebrity is the hero. It is and because of D'Annunzio's creation of it, through the manipulation of traditional archetypes, is what produced the modern celebrity. Celebrity as this kind of like really idealized, marketed figure, not just as, oh, this author's really good, a lot of people have read him, but like, I am this thing, buy my books, buy, look at me. He creates this, and he does it in a really fascinating and exciting way. But it becomes both, it's a thing for very damaged people who need to be an archetype to feel good, or kind of hapless fools. I think there are very, very, very few like conscious and intentional celebrities. Or anybody who is a celebrity and conscious is extremely particular in their marketing of themselves.
Interesting.
Like I've known people who are that. And they are extremely intentional about what they put out.
Mm.
And because they have to be.
You have to be. You have to protect yourself and your life. It's interesting. I want to get into more archetypes. For someone that's never heard of archetypes, how would you define that to them?
An archetype is a flow of energy. It's a distinct flow of energy throughout time that takes on different but similar forms.
I like that.
So, like, one example of an archetype, for example, would be like the mother or like the caring mother.
Yes, and the way that we symbolize mothers changes drastically over time. But parts of it remain the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Jung makes the great comparison of the witch's cauldron to the Holy Grail. Both are symbols of femininity, but both are as different as could be. Yeah. And then even just in the Bible, the cup of the whore of Babylon, the cup full of the blood of the saints, is the Holy Grail. They are the same thing. The mother, or does Mary Magdalene catch the blood, or does Mother Mary catch the blood? I don't remember.
Both. I have no idea.
Mary, singular, catches the blood, and it's mirrored with the whore of Babylon. But the thing to remember is that there's only one woman, and there's only one cup. All of these dual Christian symbols are ultimately singular.
Interesting.
So, just as throughout time, there's only one flow of energy, and sometimes it becomes two, but it's at the same time. It's a singular flow.
So how do you relate that to painting or art?
Good paintings are expressions of that energy. They relate to people because that energy is present not only in the collective, but in the individual psyche. And to see that energy mirrored and embodied in work is what is moving. That is what being moved is.
Yeah. One thing that I think about sometimes, I don't know how to articulate this, but I feel like I want to say it's a this generation thing, but maybe this is more like a enduring human quality. But anyway, I think a lot of young people are really like fighting for like identification, and they want like a category to put themselves in to make sense of themselves and to make sense of the world. I think that's why like teenagers are really into for example, I don't know, like Harry Potter quizzes and stuff
I saw a Harry Potter book ripped apart on the walk over here.
Really?
Just what I would say.
But yeah, I feel like there are like so many like what blank are you, BuzzFeed quizzes, etc. I recently took a Jungian archetype quiz because I was curious, and it did feed like some of my ego. But I don't know. I think for me, like, how do you toe the line between like what is actual like introspection / like getting to know your position in the universe versus how much of it is just kind of like senseless and egotistical?
It's funny that you use the word egotistical because I think it's quite the opposite. It is the lack of ego that produces that sentiment. I also think it is radically new. There was no such thing as a teenager 100 years ago.
Yes.
There were no teenagers.
Yeah. It's a modern invention.
It's a modern invention, and the identity is a modern invention as well, and a ridiculous one at that. The personality tests, and this is the reason that I utilize them, they are tools to hook people in. This is why Scientology is so effective. It's brilliant about Scientology. Do you know about Jonah Peretti, the BuzzFeed founder?
Yes.
Who's a Deleuzian? And it is because of the schizophrenizing of culture and the schizophrenizing of people that these identities can be gained through things like that. We project ourselves into whatever vessel is given, and it's profoundly foolish. The chaos magicians and Burroughs were acutely aware that this was an extreme danger. Identity was an extreme danger in a control system that had to be destroyed. And that's why, like, you know, people think of like Nick Land as a dark Deleuzian, but Jonah Peretti is legitimately he's like the Bernays of Deleuze. Like, what if we took something that works and made it really evil? But it's also cool. I mean, I'm saying I use it. Like, I'm a magician. I'm willing to transcend morals to achieve aims that I think are just.
BuzzFeed is like an art piece.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. This is related to art, but how do you keep your inner child alive?
That's not hard. The inner child is very strong. Well, talking about the identities, I'd been posting as Tom Thumb.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Well, I think I'd been very, very stuffed up until I started moving around. And then I was like, oh, I am very young. I'd gotten so caught up in my learning and my regular doings, my regular friends, that I felt very old. Things were very established. And when I destroyed all of that, I felt very, very young again. I would say that pretty much all of the poetry is a product of that inner child. Meme analysis is not. Meme analysis is definite, which is why I think many people are like, oh, he's wise. And the only thing that I could say is that like Lao Tzu, Lao Tzu, the writer of the Tao Te Ching, his name means old child.
Oh, I love that.
In one.
I love that.
The Jungian Hillman calls it puer et senex. It's like little boy and old man in one.
Didn't he say that's what I was like?
Yeah.
Romy's like, you're really old, like an 80-year-old lady, but you're also like 5. I'm like, kind of.
Well, I also think that is what trauma can produce.
It's true.
I know. I certainly would not have been, because otherwise I think there's a relatively normal life trajectory. And that's why the inner child has to be kept alive in normal people more than in kind of fucked up people.
Yeah, I noticed that because I have a very normal job. I work in marketing, actually. And a lot of my coworkers or people that I see through my job that are more kind of normal and not as into, like, I don't know, collecting dolls and...
Do you collect dolls?
Low key.
Do you have cupies?
I do have some funny angels and cupies, yes.
I'm a big fan of cupies.
I love cupies. Yeah, we can definitely talk about Cupid.
Cupid is the Aeonic child.
Oh my god, yeah.
So I'm not sure if you're aware of the symbolism around Crowley's Aeon, which is the Aeon of the child. And the child in question is Harpocrates. Harpocrates is Horus the child. It's a Greek way of saying Horus the child. It's like Horparkrat. Horus the child, he is the archetypal child. Because Egyptian mythology is the oldest, generally it's the source of the best, like most essentially archetypal stories. But it's universal across all child myths. The only example I'm going to give right now is the comparison with Hercules. So, have you seen the Disney Hercules?
I actually haven't seen it. No.
Have you seen the art of baby Hercules strangling snakes?
Yes.
So that comes from Harpocrates. Harpocrates is, as all child gods are, threatened at birth. As soon as they are born, they are threatened with being swallowed alive, being eaten up by monsters. This is also very beautiful in the Bible, when the woman clothed with the sun gives birth, and Satan is ready to eat the child upon birth, but saved and swept up into the heavens. So that is Harpocrates. Harpocrates is the child god that overcomes beasts, that overcomes monsters, snakes, scorpions, and so on. That is the image that is then put into Hercules, very particularly. Because Hercules then continues this. As Horus grows up, and he becomes a destroyer. You know, he's a warrior god. He's a great solar annihilator. And even the child aspect has a warrior aspect where he not only overcomes but destroys beasts. Hercules, of course, is literally defined by his 12 zodiacal acts of overcoming his deeds, lions and snakes and so on. That is the myth that becomes Tom Thumb. It is the myth of Harpocrates. It is the child god who overcomes and literally goes through a swallow cycle. They call Tom Thumb a swallow cycle, and it's a comical form of it. You know, it's a divine myth reduced to a hero, reduced to a fairy tale, and this is why Tom Thumb goes to the zodiacal swallow cycle, but he's always coming out at the other end. And so, to give the Aquarian Tom Thumb, I don't know, have you read Tom Thumb? Right. So in it, he one of the famous ones, he falls into a pudding.
Oh my God, I think I remember listening to an audiobook of this when I was a kid.
He falls into a pudding, and he has to eat his way out.
I love that.
But Harpocrates, he is depicted with a jar of honey, eating. So my image is, because we're in the aeon of the child, and it's the age of Aquarius, is that it's Harpocrates eating the pudding that he himself is in. It's a recursive image. That's just a poetic image. But all of this to get to Cupid.
Yeah, let's go to... I'm curious.
Aleister Crowley describes Harpocrates. I'm just prefacing with what the archetype is. Because really, all of that is about Cupid. That is Cupid. Cupid is a pink blob. Harpocrates is a pink blob. He is on a thing of mayo. And then he steps off and becomes a true icon. I really like Cupid. My grandmother has Cupids. I think they're the bee's knees. I love them.
I think they're really cute.
Even the little curl. If I could show you, we could go to the Met and show you that curl on Harpocrates. It's a defining image of Egyptian children.
That's so interesting. It's funny because Cupid, before, when I was a kid, I was really into Cupid, like maybe when I was around 5 or 6, and my dad bought me this 1920s Cupid lamp on eBay that was a Cupid doll that had a light bulb inside of it, and it glowed, and I had it for one night, and it just fell off my shelf and broke, and I've never been able to find it again. So if anyone out there knows where I can get a 1920s Bakelite Cupid lamp, let me know. But I think it's interesting when you think about what items or what images you're drawn to naturally. And as a child, as a child was really into rodents, Cupid, rodents, horses. You're
a horse girl?
I was, yeah.
Do you follow horse girl updates?
I don't, but I look at their page sometimes.
She's a dear friend.
That's cool.
I highly suggest.
Yeah, I'll check it out. I was a horse girl, and then I traded that for being really slutty in high school. So there are different types of horse girls. I think there's the traditional Freudian horse girl, which is more likely was your case. But I also think there's a degree of I'm trying to think of how to put it non-offensively. It's okay.
An asocial horse girl.
Oh yeah, definitely. A reaching time. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Asocial horse girls, they exist.
It could be speed run. How long is it
I don't know. What time does it say? How long have we been going?
It is.
Oh yeah, damn, we are out of time.
Okay. Memes matter.
Memes matter.
Damn, do we have time for a quick card?
All right, ask a question.
Question.
Will love prevail?
You already know the answer.
I just wanted to hear it back. What do you think?
Will tomorrow be a good day?
Love prevails.
Wow.
All right. This has been a great episode of Beyond Narrative. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Chris, for being a guest. I guess we're done now.